And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Hello, I'm David Kramer with Alaska Weather. Thanks for joining for our aviation section today. Starting off, we will take a quick look at our MVFR and IFR charts, but I do want to mention that Bezimiana is still an active volcano. It is currently spewing ash up to 28,000 feet, and we do expect that to move in over the western Aleutian Islands area this afternoon, so Thursday afternoon. Back to our IFR and MVFR charts out over the Bering Sea and Aleutian Islands. We have pretty widespread IFR conditions as we have that low moving across towards the west coast of the state, starting to push in those MVFR conditions into much of the west coast as well. Out over the central and eastern interior and up into the northern part of the state, still some pockets of VFR conditions up there Friday morning, and then we have some IFR conditions out over the Gulf of Alaska, North Gulf Coast, and a mix of MVFR and IFR down to the Panhandle. As we move into Friday afternoon, primarily MVFR conditions down in the Panhandle, but we will have some areas of IFR pushing farther east through the Gulf of Alaska. MVFR conditions through much of South Central and much of the interior and out to the west coast of the state. Far eastern locations in the interior still expected to be VFR, and some IFR sneaking into the coastline up along the Arctic coast. Down in the Bering Sea and Aleutian Islands, primarily IFR conditions are expected Friday afternoon. Then on Saturday, filling in more with that IFR, pretty widespread throughout the Bering Sea and Aleutian Islands, starting to make it into some areas of the west coast as well. Much of the state will be in MVFR conditions Saturday morning, but we will have some IFR farther to the north. Also have primarily IFR down in the Panhandle area. Then in Saturday afternoon, clearing up once again, primarily MVFR conditions in the Panhandle, mix of VFR and MVFR for South Central Alaska, but MVFR is going to be the dominant factor for much of the mainland on Saturday afternoon. Some areas of IFR farther up to the north. Out over the Bering Sea and Aleutians, still primarily IFR, especially for the Aleutian Islands. Looking at our passes starting up north, Anaktuvuk should be VFR dropping down to marginal conditions in the afternoon, as well as at Adigan Pass. Lake Clark and Merrill will both start off IFR but improve to MVFR in the afternoon. Rainy Pass should be MVFR all day on Friday. Windy Pass also expected to be MVFR as well as Isabel Pass. And Mantasta looking a little bit clearer there. VFR conditions are expected. Continue to pass MVFR conditions expected Friday and IFR expected for Portage. Chilkoot and White will both start off IFR and improve to marginal conditions in the afternoon. Taking a look now at our freezing levels, we have the area of warmer air and higher freezing levels out over eastern portions of the state, but we do still have a pocket of colder air with that low that's moving towards the coastline, bringing our freezing levels down to 6,000 feet Friday morning. Looking at our icing, we'll have icing over the west coast of the state, above 8,000 feet up north and above 7,000 feet as we get over southwest Alaska. Taking a look at our jet stream, a pretty westerly flow throughout much of the Bering Sea Aleutians area, getting up to 80 to 85 knots there. Strongest portion of the jet is going to be over southwest Alaska, pushing through the Barren Islands area out of a west-northwest direction up to as high as 100 knots, and then shifting out over the state out of a southerly direction around 75 knots there. Not as much going on out over the Panhandle area, but a little branch of the jet around 60 knots just to the south and east of the Panhandle. Dropping down to 9,000 feet, a lot calmer for the Panhandle area. We'll see some of the stronger winds out in the western areas of the Gulf, up to as high as 40 knots out of a westerly direction. A little bit weaker as we get over southwest Alaska, around 30 knots there. And then moving into the eastern portions of the state out of a southwesterly direction, 40 knots expected. However, the strongest portions of the wind are going to be out over the Aleutian Islands out of a westerly direction, up to as high as 50 knots there. Dropping down to 9,000 feet, we'll still see some of those stronger winds out over the central and western Aleutians. Westerly flow expected up to as high as 45 knots. Out over the state, we'll see some of those westerly winds out over much of the western portions down into southwest Alaska, around 35 knots. A little barrier jet there by Prince William Sound area, up to as high as 40 knots. And up along the Arctic coastline, easterly winds 25 getting up as high as 40 knots as we get farther to the west, and pretty calm over the Panhandle area. Taking a look then at our turbulence, as that front moves through the state, we will have some turbulence through much of the southern portions of the interior into the Alaska range, expected from the surface to 5,000 feet, and that's going to be true with our barrier jet down by Prince William Sound area as well. And then as we move to the very northwestern portions of the state by Point Hope area, below 3,000 feet is expected. And our central and western Aleutians, where we saw some of those stronger winds, below 3,000 feet is expected there. And I'm David Kramer. Thanks for watching.